Yeah, hey guys, thanks for jumping on after, yeah, a pretty long floor session. Just wanted to start by just acknowledging that it feels unfortunate that we weren't in a position to support the budget today. Obviously, we had 7 members of our caucus on the appropriations team led by Vice Chair Cafaro that worked really hard over the last 2.5 months to improve the budget, and our fingerprints are all over that budget. But unfortunately, it just wasn't. It wasn't in the shape that we needed it to be able to support it today. We wish we could have, but we felt like we should have been investing resources in creating jobs and opportunity in Montana, and it just didn't get there for us. We do have some major issues with where we left things. You saw us, I think, run a series of amendments that highlighted where we thought those gaps and holes are and missed opportunities. And with that, I will hand it over to Representative Cafaro to say a little bit more about that.
Okay, so you probably remember that in Section B, Health and Human Services Subcommittee of Appropriations, we started off on a bad note with the $1 billion cut. And we clawed our way back from that. But as you probably heard today on the House floor, when the budget was being presented, the chairman of the subcommittee kind of took a victory lap. But be that as it may, I'm glad that the $1 billion went back into the budget. But in the meantime, people were horribly, horribly afraid of what was going to happen to their lives and to the lives of their children and their other loved ones, thinking that $1 billion had been cut from the services that they depend on. And so what I will say is we're happy that the money was put back. It wasn't necessary to put people through that stress. And in large part, the reason it went back was because of the work of Democrats, but more importantly, because of the work of the public. Lots of public input on that. And I really appreciate their effort, especially in light of the fact that they were doing everything you need to do every day just to get by. As it turns out, we ended up under the governor's requested budget, and the reason we did is ridiculous because we have the money to do what we should do and could do, and instead it was a choice. It was a choice to cut mental health services for children, to cut the safety measures that are put in place and the quality and education components of childcare, as well as home and community-based services for people who are senior citizens. And it was a choice. I mean, somebody made the statement that, you have to make tough choices when you don't have the money, except this was very different because we have more money in this state than we've had maybe in history. And so I just want to make it clear that these were choices, and that's why we came in under the budget. Not good choices, I would say. The other piece is that when we cut unnecessarily like this, cut services, as you know, we cut jobs. We cut the ability for people who have disabilities, single moms to go to work and get the training they need and the education to get jobs. So cutting services is not good, as well as then it slows down job growth in the economy. Also, the people that provide the services, we have lost so much ground in that area because the providers and the businesses, they have those really tough jobs, and many of them worked during the pandemic, but there's the opportunity for expansion. And what I mean by that is, for example, Representative Willis Curdy moved an amendment to House Bill 2 to increase home and community-based services for senior citizens. Do you know why we can't increase services for people who want to live in their homes and age and people with disabilities? Because there's not enough workers to take care of them. Why aren't there enough workers? Because Republicans won't support investing in the services that are necessary. So that was an important component. That is a win-win. People get the services they need and people have jobs. And so, in general, they just, without supporting the budget or the amendments that we were putting forward, the Democrats, and I was really proud of our caucus, without supporting them, they not only do harm to Montanans, but they seem uninterested in maintaining and expanding job growth. And with that, I'll turn it back to Kim.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Just a couple more things that I just wanted to highlight for y'all, on top of some of those really difficult cuts to services that Mary just highlighted in section B. We had a missed opportunity in section E. We could have improved kids' access to school meals by making a pretty modest investment that made a lot of policy sense and would have had a significant impact. And we failed to do that. But the other thing that I wanted to just flag, and I think you guys probably noticed it, is we are using ARPA funds to replace general fund in a number of different places. These should be long-term investments that we're budgeting and planning for and should be part of our base from our perspective. And I'm not sure why we're filling those in with ARPA. I'm interested to hear, as this week, obviously we're going to hear that bill in appropriations, and maybe we'll get a better sense, but it's concerning. I think that this money goes away in 4 years, and these are programs and services that we should be funding over the long run. I don't think it's the intent of ARPA to do that. And so we'll be watching that pretty closely and looking for an explanation for that. But with that, I think that, we have some work to do. There's no question. I think we indicated that. I just like Mary, I'm proud of our team on the floor today. I think we were able to highlight where we're falling short for our communities and our constituents. And there's a lot of work to do. We'll watch it closely on the Senate side and work with our colleagues over there to see if we can get the budget fixed in a way that allows us to support it. We would love that down the stretch. It would feel really good to have a product that we could vote for. With that, we're happy to take questions, and I think Nathan can facilitate that.
Let's go Eric, then Arn.
Yeah, this might be a Nathan question, but do you have a number for the total amount your run of Health and Human Services amendments added up to? Like how much in total you were hoping to put back in today?
I do have that, not on hand though. I'll get that back to you, and I can get it to other folks looking for it.
It's weird, to just ask Nathan at this point directly.
I'm being,
I would be absolutely blown away. Well, maybe I shouldn't be, but I would be blown away if you had that number off the top of your head.
Actually, we do have it, Nathan.
We actually do have it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I've got it here. Megan Harbaugh's on the call. She's tracking the budget for us. She is very helpfully letting me know that we wanted to put about 23 million back into the budget over 2 years in section B. Thanks, Megan.
Great. So less than the initial income tax proposal.
Yes, by quite a large margin. Arn.
Thanks. I'm curious. You guys have talked a lot about your successes in restoring that initial $1 billion cut. I'm wondering if you have any sort of analysis with some hindsight of what was successful there that was unsuccessful in restoring any number of these other cuts. I mean, what did you employ then that worked, didn't work this time? Or do you have any hope that you're actually going to be able to make some of those same arguments with some of these other cuts successfully moving forwards?
I think I wanted to let Mary take that one. I think that our appropriations team dug in and made the case, both Mary McNally in the Senate and Vice Chair Cafaro. And we just didn't get far. I don't know if I could say like what tactics are more successful. We certainly haven't looked at that, but I think we heard from, like Mary said, we heard from an overwhelming amount of Montanans on how this would affect them, their communities, their families. And the bottom line is I know that Representative Regier today said that he thought this was a good way to do business. I don't understand his point, if I'm being honest, but I do know the anxiety and pain it causes in communities when people think their services are getting cut. It is not a good way to do business from my perspective. People should be able to count on stability. And so, because it was so terrifying to people, we heard a lot from them. And Mary, do you want to add?
Well, not that I'm ever dishonest, but sometimes I don't, in my opinion, in my analysis, what happened is probably that the $1 billion rollback was a part of a bigger strategy on the part of the Republicans. And what I mean by that is there possibly was, it wasn't a part of doing business as the chair stated today. Again, this is my opinion. Nobody confirmed it, but a lot of people have been rattling around about it. Kind of on the street was the rollback was really playing games with people's lives. And it was totally unnecessary. And the point, I never was clear because supposedly the reason given is not whatever played out.
And sorry if I'm losing the order here, folks, but I think we'll go Holly, then Jackie, then Austin, then Zach.
Yeah, I'm wondering with some of those votes today to use the ARPA money to kind of backfill, I understand the concerns with that's, one time only and not permanently funding these programs. But then I remember in one of the presentations, I think it was Amy Carlson put up that visual of needing that really big brick wall between House Bill 2 here and then the ARPA funds there to avoid any concern over the rules for using that money. Did any of that stuff today raise any red flags there at all?
Yeah, for me it did. Holly, it's funny that you brought that up. Like I just said that to Cafaro like 20 minutes ago that that it doesn't seem like that brick wall. It seems more like a chain link fence right now. You know what I mean? So I just think we have some questions that we need to run down and get better answers on. But yeah, I mean, definitely it doesn't seem in line with sort of the legal advice or guidelines that we've been given so far on the ARPA money. So I think it's an open question that we're going to have to stay on. I don't know, Mary, do you have something to add?
No, well, the ARPA funds are not ongoing. And so much of the direction or the framework that I've been encouraged to work within is to try to find purposes for this funding that are one time only. And so the rules today on the floor, I mean, what happened today on the floor didn't seem to fit in within their own rules, which is many of the switches of funding are ongoing. They're not one time only. And so, yeah, I think there are a lot of questions there, and I'm not sure if there's a set of rules for me and a set of rules for everyone else, but it's kind of mysterious.
Jackie?
Okay, I suppose this question is for Minority Leader Abbott. A lot of the votes we saw on amendments today were on party lines, especially in Section B. Did you anticipate that? Did you think you would win over more Republicans on some of those amendments, or did you expect them to mostly go down a party line vote?
I always hope that we can make our case and shift some votes. But I do think that the die was kind of cast walking into the debate. I think our team did a good job making a case, did a good job highlighting where those gaps were through the amendment process. But I wasn't too surprised that we didn't get a whole bunch of Republican votes, although we did get a few. And I think that that's meaningful when that happens.
And I do have a follow-up question, if that's okay, for Representative Cafaro. Based on what you said a little bit earlier, is that you think it didn't play out, removing the DPHS funding at the beginning of the negotiations didn't play out how Republicans were hoping it would. And I guess I'm just trying to clarify, what did you hear, or what did you expect, or what do you think that they were hoping for?
You mean the $1 billion?
Yeah, yep.
There was no negotiations on that. That action was not in a negotiation. Democrats had nothing to do with that. As a matter of fact, we never would have agreed to it, especially in a session when we have this much money, and knowing what an impact that had on the people that we represent, who were in fear of what was going to happen to their children who have disabilities, for example. So that was not the middle of a negotiation. That action of removing that $1 billion was totally Republican, not Democrat. And actually, we were very surprised when it happened. There had been some discussion, but not that deep. And so what I mean exactly is, when the reason, you have to take a person for their word. The reason given the rollback was to then look at the budget very closely and make decisions about what made sense and what didn't make sense. and really have a deep dive. Part of me wonders if that was the reason, and maybe perhaps there were other reasons. And what I know for sure is that it wasn't necessary, and they got a lot of attention for that. And I'm not really sure why they rolled back the $1 billion, but yeah, it seemed like a part of a bigger political strategy. And I think it's very important that we don't play politics with people's lives. Absolutely do not play politics with people's lives.
Austin.
Yeah, thank you both for holding this call. My question could probably be answered by either of you, but I was wondering if either of you have heard anything about the negotiations Representative Regier mentioned involving the CSCT program, and if you have anything you can add to what he said about those negotiations being ongoing for like a different funding source or something like that. I was a little bit unclear what he meant.
So what happened is the department had a choice to make the federal government change the rules, and their choice was to kick a bunch of kids off of CSCT, which is mental health services in the schools. That was their choice, to do that or try to figure out a way to make sure that they got the services they needed. And under the Bullock administration, of course, they prioritized the needs of the children and families. So then they came to this session, the department, and one of the requests in Governor Bullock's budget, as well as Gianforte's, was to fund this using general fund, drawdown, federal match, the traditional way of funding Medicaid. So it seems like there may be ways to be more efficient with money and have more skin in the game from the schools and more players at the table. So right now they're working out a plan, that is Department of Health and Human Services, the education community, and the providers. So while they're working out a plan, the clock is ticking. These services end on June 30th. They're not funded past June 30th. I think that the chair was confusing in his answer to that, but in our budget, the funding ends on June 30th. So the folks are trying to work out a plan. All we were asking for in that amendment of Sarah Novak, Representative Sarah Novak's, was to continue, just have bridge funding for the next 3 months to have a continuation of services. We're getting really close to that clock, and I don't know. I think that there will be a solution worked out, but there's no reason to put children's mental health and families on the line while people try to figure out the solution. Actually, we should have funded it for 2 years, if you ask me, and that's what Democrats would have done. It's a good investment.
Thank you.
Zach?
Thanks again for holding this. I have 2 questions. The first one is for Minority Leader Abbott. I guess I'm wondering, for the newbie here on the call, just how often when you have floor debates on House B2, is it, in your experience, on party lines, whether that's voting on amendments or whether that's the final vote for the bill itself? I mean, is it sort of unprecedented that would happen in a debate like this?
I think it's definitely depended in the past. I think last session, the last 2 sessions, debate on amendments and the budget were by and large party line. That hasn't always been true. I forget, Kafir will probably remember, like several sessions ago, we had like 100-0 vote on the budget, so it's not unprecedented that there's bipartisan energy and support for a budget. The last few sessions, clearly there've just been serious disagreements around values and what is getting invested in and funded. Does that answer it, Zach?
Yeah, thank you. And then a follow-up for Representative Cafaro. I'm wondering, because, part of what we're hearing now, things are obviously different just with a Republican governor in office. I mean, do you think the sense that I'm getting from you is that, a lot of these decisions are being made unilaterally between the governor's office and the legislative majority? I mean, how do you feel a part of, after the way things went today, do you feel a part of the budget making strategy, or do you feel kind of left out in these discussions?
Well, first off, what I would say about your last question was, if you put a good budget forward, you'll get bipartisan support. And this was not a good budget. As a matter of fact, like Leader Abbott said about the 100 to 0 vote, that was in 2011. That was a good budget. 100 to 0, unheard of. But yeah, so it wouldn't be party line if it had been a good budget. And then as far as being a part of the budget making process, it's really not traditional for actually legislators to be involved in the framework of a budget that the governor puts forward. I mean, it's his budget, and then it's the framework to work off of. And I wouldn't be involved in that. I don't think any legislators really are. That's the governor's job, the executive, to put the budget forward. We're all busy working. We're all busy working our regular jobs until we get here. But once it's here, I feel really fortunate because I'm not saying I'm being left out or anything like that. What you saw on the floor today is what's happening. And I have the opportunity, as do all of the Democrats, to do the best we can. And hopefully Republicans will, they'll realize that what we're talking about when we talk about human services, for example, in education, specifically those two parts, corrections even, is their jobs. And when you cut $1 out of DPHHS, then you lose sometimes $9 federal dollars. And those dollars circulate in every county's economy. They have small businesses, big businesses that provide the services. They have thousands and thousands of employees and jobs. And then by working together with the people that they support and the services they provide, then actually the people who have the services go to work. And so, I think that that's my message. That's our message, is that you can, with this kind of money, we have a very, very good opportunity to turn the economy around and to do generational change for families.
And I think before looping back to folks' second questions, we'll go to James.
Thank you. I guess my question is also as a person who's very, very new to all of this. It feels like the floor session was moving through the sections of the budget and finished talking about it at breakneck speed. Was that an unprecedented amount of speed? Was it normal? What are your thoughts on I guess the rate of debate?
Well, I'll let Mary take this. She has a broader and longer perspective on it. But I will say that when, for section B, there was, a half an hour or and change opening, which got a lot of commentary from the chair. I mean, section B is $6 billion. It deserves 35 minutes. It deserves a lot more than that. So I definitely feel like we could be taking more time and we could be understanding a little bit more about the decisions we're making, the impact that it has on, our local economies and families in our district. So I definitely would have paced it differently. And I don't know, Mary, if you want to add anything.
Well, House Bill 2 used to be on the floor for 5 days. And I can remember being in Finance Committee and ending at 1 a.m. That was pretty common. I can remember being on the House floor and ending at 1 a.m. And so, and our section B, Human Services, in the budget is 5 pages long. I'm like, 5 pages long? That's not even a page per $1 billion. So yeah, it's changed dramatically. And I didn't understand that commentary. Oh my goodness. 30 minutes is nothing. And the chair needed 30 minutes. And then I took 5 minutes to give comments too. And so I don't know, it's how it is, I guess, now. And there are some of us who have tried really hard to rein that back in, take a deeper dive, kind of like what Chair Aguirre was talking about, why the $1 billion was cut, so we could take a deeper dive. You can see how deep we went. 30 minutes and 5 pages, and all the amendments were Democrat amendments.
Okay, thanks.
And sorry, guys, I didn't see the order that your hands went up in. So on my screen, it's Eric R. and then Holly.
Great. So just to clarify, were any of for the DPHHS section, were any of the budget amendments you brought today things that would have built the budget up past the governor's recommendation, or were they all restorations of cuts made in the House Appropriations or the subcommittee process?
I believe they were all, well, I know they were all cuts that were made in the subcommittee, and there were cuts that were made that we didn't even get to. So yeah, I'm sorry if my phone keeps dinging. I hope that's not dinging to everybody, but I don't know what to do about it. So excuse me for that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we didn't solve any of the major problems, let alone all of them in Section B.
Okay, so those all were votes to restore cuts made in Section B, but not, even if they'd all passed, that wouldn't have been everything.
That's right. There was
Yeah.
outside of the Section B, there was the amendment by Representative Willis Curdy. And that was to invest more in home and community-based services for senior citizens. Now that was not a cut in the subcommittee, but one of the most important cuts, and I don't think we've talked about it yet, is the elimination of continuous eligibility for people who have Medicaid expansion.
And
Should I ask a follow-up question about that?
If you like.
Should I ask a follow-up question about continuous eligibility? Yeah. Can you explain that, please?
In Montana, we're one of 2 states proudly who have decided to invest in healthcare over bureaucratic hoops and red tape. And what I mean by that is if you apply for Medicaid and you qualify economically, then you have Medicaid expansion for 12 months. And with that's a very positive, I mean, you know all the reasons why. It keeps people working. They don't have to take time off to go sit in a office of public assistance or be on the phone line trying to figure out, gosh, I'm a server. Last week, my income, I got, $20 of tips more than usual. I went over the eligibility line. Now am I going to lose my Medicaid expansion? It's ridiculous. So Montana has chosen to invest in people rather than red tape. And so it's 12 months of continuous eligibility. It's very successful and there's no reason to change it. And what happened in subcommittee was the Republicans removed continuous eligibility from the budget. I'm sure Minority Abbott can say more.
Yeah, I think it's such good policy. It's efficient, it's effective, and it's effective for our whole healthcare system. It avoids churn, which is bad for private carriers. And often, and this is something that I think, and Eric, we should just talk about it separately so I don't go down a crazy rabbit hole here, but it is such good policy. It's so important we keep it for our healthcare system and for folks that are recipients, both. So we're going to fight really hard for it. It's a big deal to our caucus. We're so proud of how well Medicaid expansion works. And I think Representative Cafaro was perfect on the floor today when she said it's cutting edge policy. And it's proven to be incredibly effective. And I don't understand why we are eroding it. So we're gonna keep on pointing out how important it is down the stretch here.
Thanks.
Arn.
Yeah, I'm just kind of jumping off some conversation that was had a little earlier. It came up, obviously, this is the first Republican governor in a long time, and it also seems like the GOP is a little bit less fractious than it's been in the past. Perhaps the kind of coalitions have changed a little bit. I'm curious in your guys, from the debate and policymaking process on HB2, how the dynamic has kind of changed without obviously without a Democratic governor to kind of back you up, and without being able to, at least at this stage, it seems, not really relying on some Republican defectors in the same way to swing big votes. To either of you.
Yeah, I guess we saw the same thing you did today on the floor. Obviously it was a party line vote. We think that the budget is inadequate. I think there was a general acknowledgement from the chair of appropriations and the sponsor of House Bill 2 that this was he felt like the budget was where it needed to be at this stage. I think there was a general acknowledgement that there would be changes in the Senate. Certainly, I think Representative Cafaro and I are hoping that they're changes for the better, and that our Democratic colleagues can, have their fingerprints on some of the things that we think are wholly inadequate about the budget at this point. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. I don't know, Mary, if you have something to add.
Well, I would say that we have been lucky to have 16 years of a Democratic governor, and the budget is a framework and a statement of our values. And the American Recovery Plan is a document from a Democrat president and Democrat Senate and House, and it has Democrat values embedded in it. And so when you're starting from the framework of values that we share and that the Montanans share with us, you put people first and put jobs first, and people can have dignity and economic stability, then you're going to have a different framework than what we currently have.
Holly?
Yeah, I got a bunch more questions, but I'll keep it brief. I'm wondering about the amendment that gave $1 million to the youth system for sort of implementation of House Bill 102 related items. And was that something, like, I hadn't heard that was coming? Was that something that was expected? And I guess just reactions to that too. I know I heard some frustrations that, from Democrats saying, like, we were told there wasn't a fiscal note or cost with this bill.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Representative Thane spoke well for our caucus on that one. It is frustrating to hear that there's no cost and then see a $1 million price tag a couple weeks later, or I guess a couple months later. So I don't know if I have much to add to what Representative Thane covered on the floor. Mary, do you have anything?
Eric, did you have another? All right. Holly,
no, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, that was a negative. Sorry.
I kind of on the flip side of budget discussion, just wondering if either of you have had any thoughts on kind of the updated revenue estimate is looking pretty optimistic. I wonder if you think that's a fair where they're at right now. And then also kind of in conjunction with that, I've heard that the, I can't remember, I think it's Senate Bill 159, but to Jean Forte's income tax bill that was amended in committee to have a much larger fiscal note. I've heard that's being held in committee to do some more work on it. Just wondering if that's a discussion Democrats are part of it all.
Finally, something about taxes. Thanks, Holly. Just kidding. Yeah, so on the revenue estimate, we saw LFD come in their presentation. I think it was 362 million over November. I mean, we have 6 months of data essentially. That was the other estimate was based on October data. We were still like deep in the effects of the pandemic and weren't sure. I mean, so I guess to answer your question, I think that it's a fair assessment. The budget office is about 100 million lower than that. I'm not sure what we'll do in terms of adjustments in that committee, and obviously we'll have a bunch of discussions about it, but I do think that our economic circumstances have improved, certainly since October. So that's reflected, and I think it makes sense. Where we come down, I thought that the budget office was a lot more cautious, and at the end of the day, you're talking about a 1% difference, but it's $100 million, which is a big deal for budgeting, right? So we're going to have to get into some discussions about what it means and where we want to land. And I think that being cautious is the right way to go right now, because we still are not sure what the long-term economic impacts will be. The second part of your question was, yeah, so Right. So Representative Knutson's amendment to Senate Bill 159, I think it is, took that fiscal note from $30 million a year to $80 million a year. That is a significant increase. That is a huge tax expenditure. I don't know how long they'll wait on it or what they're waiting for, but that's an expensive amendment and a serious price tag. And I would just point out that the benefit is still to the wealthiest Montanans. It's not doing anything for middle class and working class folks, really. And that continues to be our biggest frustration with the approach from the Gianforte administration on tax policy.
I think we'll kick it to Zach for our last question here.
And sorry if it's kind of already been addressed, but I guess just from an overview standpoint for Representative Cafaro, where do things stand, just in layman's terms, with appropriating the COVID relief dollars that the state is about to receive, if it hasn't already?
Are you talking about the new funds that came through the recovery?
Yes, I am. The 2.7 billion through ARPA.
Okay, the bill to appropriate those funds is being drafted. So I believe it's being drafted or close to being drafted. And then we will have a hearing in appropriations on, I believe, the 24th. And then we'll go from there, as it's much like the process for House Bill 2.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, I think we'll let everyone go. Just before that, I wanted to clarify something I noted a little earlier. Our amendments to Section B would have restored a little over 23 million in general fund to the budget. If folks are looking for federal or special revenues tied to those, let me know and we can get it for you. But with that, really appreciate everyone taking the time today. If folks need a recording, let me know. Happy Monday.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate being on.
Thanks
so much.